Quite literally, as I sat down to record this YouTube video, a client texted me. All right, this reminds me of the very first time that I was sitting at home watching, I don't know, at that point I was probably watching West Wing or something. It was about 10 o'clock at night and one of my private practice clients called me. I really wanted to respond, but I also knew it was important to set boundaries. And in that moment, I realized that when you are a therapist in private practice, you need to get clear on how to set boundaries without losing clients. In today's video, we are going to talk about 5 times in private practice where we all have to learn how to set boundaries without losing clients. The 5th one is absolutely going to surprise you, so let's get into it right now. Item number 1 is setting boundaries around your phone. Do not make the mistake I did when I was early in private practice. I was in my early 20s. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married, anything. I was on my own, and to be honest with you, I had my phone with me a lot. So I kind of thought like, okay, well, my clients can text me. I set up my phone to be HIPAA compliant, and I just kind of thought like, it's fine, no big deal. Very quickly, I learned that if I allowed clients to text me at any hour of the day, I would be on my phone a lot. Once I'd already gotten into that situation, it was extremely hard to backtrack it. So the number one thing that I recommend you do is that you set boundaries around your phone hours. I'm going to link below my scripts book that helps you communicate this to clients. But the first thing I suggest that you do is put it in your intake paperwork. Somewhere in your intake packet, you want to have a small sentence that communicates when you are available for phone calls. I'm going to put mine on the screen, but make sure you include this somewhere in your intake paperwork. Also, I usually communicate this in a first session to clients. I'll tell them, hey, I'm not really available between sessions for anything other than scheduling. If something comes up, you're always welcome to email me, but just know that unfortunately, I'm not able to respond as a crisis responder. So if you need extra support, we can always book another session during the week if you really need a space to talk. More than likely, when I have clients who say, you know what, I don't really want to book another session and I don't really need to pay for another session, I just really wanted to talk in this moment, I will tell them, hey, let's build some supports in your real life that help you use your support system. So that might be reaching out to a friend. It might be journaling. It might be getting involved in AA or another 12-step group. It might be seeking out some sort of mentorship outside of therapy. My goal is not to make my clients dependent on me. And if they really need that support between sessions, it typically is telling me that they either need another session per week or that they need a higher level of care. So remember, always put it in your intake paperwork. Also bring it up in that first session, and make sure to check out my scripts book below, which talks a little bit more about this. The next boundary that's super important to have is around your scope of practice. This is one we do not think about very often as therapists, because oftentimes when we've worked in an agency setting or somewhere before we have our own practices, we don't necessarily have to think about who we see. But it is extremely important once you are working in private practice to really niche down. Again, I'll link more resources to niching down below. I have a guide, but it's important to communicate to your clients what your scope of practice is. Here's how that situation comes up. When you are in an intake session with somebody, oftentimes they've already filled out your intake paperwork. Maybe they have already kind of talked to you on the phone. And ideally, by the time they get to that intake session, you're pretty sure that they are facing issues that are in the scope of what you do and how you work as a therapist. So for example, if you specialize in working with eating disorders, maybe they have an eating disorder. If you work with kids, they are not an adult, right? They're not super far outside of your scope of practice. But I really believe that it's also important to put your scope of practice on your website, to communicate it in your intake phone calls, so that when clients come and see you, they really know that you are a specialist in what you do. Now, where this becomes tricky is when there is some gray area, like, is this person really in the scope of what I do? Are they not? How do I know? And sometimes we don't realize this until they're sitting in that first session. Maybe we kind of start to realize, oh, this person is actually facing some things that are outside of the scope of what I do, and I didn't realize that in the intake paperwork. It's really important in that first session, if you realize somebody is outside of the scope of your practice, to be able to say, you know, I'm so sorry that I'm just realizing this now, but some of the fill in the blank issues that you're facing right now are actually outside of the scope of what I do. I should have realized it earlier when we were on a call, but I really want to make sure to pair you with a therapist who is a specialist in fill in the blank of what they're facing, right? Then say, I'm going to have to refer you out. Now, sometimes I still charge for these sessions and sometimes I don't. I really take it on a case-by-case basis. And I'll tell you, a lot of therapists will tell you absolutely charge for sessions like this. A lot of therapists will tell you don't. The reason I sometimes don't is because honestly, what goes around comes around. If somebody comes to my office and I realize all of a sudden that they are in maybe a high conflict divorce and that's not what I work with or something like that, and I don't charge them for this session, but they had a really positive experience with me, and I say, actually, I work with this other thing, you would be surprised how often I end up getting referrals from that family back because I've taken the time to make sure they have the right fit. So I know this video, we're talking about how to set boundaries without losing clients, and I'm telling you, refer out some of these clients. But in reality, when we have really good clinical practice and we don't work outside of our scope of practice, we end up getting more clients coming our way. All right, let's talk about the one that nobody wants to talk about, which is payment boundaries. I have seen time and time again, colleagues carry big balances for their clients. And this does not help you. And honestly, it does not help the client either. I have learned through the years that I always make sure that I bill at the end of the session. It is clearly articulated in my paperwork. I'll link my paperwork packet below. But I make sure to say payment is due at the time of the appointment. I put that in my paperwork. I don't necessarily say it out loud, but my clients are signing my paperwork. Now, situations come up where clients might have forgotten to pay or their credit card was declined. I always make sure to follow up really quickly, and I'll send somebody a text that just says something like, hey, just wanted to let you know your credit card came back declined. Happens all the time when people get new cards. Do you want to put a new card on file? Here's the link to my online portal. I use Simple Practice for this. I will link to them below. It makes it really easy. My clients just log in, great, and they can change their credit card information. Now, every once in a while, I have clients who don't pay for whatever reason. And this is the most tricky one to navigate without losing the client. Here's how I do it. I will send the client a text that says, hey, just wanted to follow up again. I noticed that you have an outstanding balance on this session. I'm really careful to not have my clients have more than one session outstanding before booking another appointment. That way we don't create a situation in our relationship where you're worried about owing me money and you feel awkward about coming to therapy. Do you want to settle up now? If so, here's the link to my portal. If a client still does not pay, even after that, I will say to them, hey, I noticed that your session is still outstanding. Maybe I'll give them a couple days for this. If you'd like to come in for another session, please let me know. But beyond this session, I won't be able to book another one until we do settle our balance. If you do need a sliding scale or there's something going on financially, please let me know and let's talk about it. I don't want to leave you hanging. Now, some therapists will say, why do you offer the sliding scale? Should we not be doing that? I don't know if I can do that, whatever it is. At the end of the day, my goal is not to abandon my clients. My goal is to be able to have healthy conversations with them around money. And so if they truly are in a place where they can no longer afford therapy, then we need to have a really good conversation about that. I have 4 sliding scale client spots in my practice at any given time. I have a whole video on this, which I'll link, but I really want to make sure that if a client needs one of those spots, I am having a conversation with them before they build up a balance of a few $1,000s and they're worried about ever having the conversation in the first place. All right, 2 more left, you guys. Last one is the wildest. So let's talk about social media boundaries. I have an entire paragraph in my intake paperwork explaining my boundaries around social media, which essentially involves, just so you know, if you see me online on my public page, because I have a public page for Private Practice Pro, right? You are never expected to follow me. If you see something that I post that bothers you, please bring it up. I'm always here to talk about it. If you see any of my personal pages on, just know I never accept friend requests from any of my clients, no matter who it is. This space is meant to be your safe space. Therapy is a unique type of relationship where it gets to be all about you, and social media can muddy those waters. So it's really important from the very beginning that you are communicating that boundary to your clients and put it in your intake paperwork. Again, I'll link mine below. Okay, here is the last one, which you might think, no, why is she even talking about this now? But it is holiday boundaries. I don't care what time of year it is. I am recording this video in the summer. It is August, and I am telling you, you need holiday boundaries. I put this in my intake paperwork that I take 2 weeks off at the holidays. I let clients know that I am really not available during that time. And so we will build a plan for them if they feel like that they need that extra support during the holidays. I personally work the first Monday of each holiday week. I tell all my clients this: if you are somebody who thinks that you are really going to need an emergency session during the holidays, the only days that I offer are those first Mondays. And so book it now, because those spots do fill up, and those are the only days I'm able to work. That's my little holiday hack. I want to know what other private practice boundaries you set. My YouTube channel is still really small. Listen, I read every single comment. I'm not even kidding you. I respond. I'm here for it. I love it. And I'll see you next time.